In the summer of 1901, a quiet house stood on Rue de la Visitation in Poitiers, France. Its shutters were closed more often than not. Neighbors passed by without suspicion. Respectable family, good name, old money, nothing unusual. Until a letter arrived. It was unsigned. It accused a prominent family of hiding a terrible secret. Police hesitated. The Monnier family was well known. Aristocratic, charitable, proper, the kind of household that attended church, hosted dinners, and upheld appearances. But something in the letter was specific enough to disturb them. It claimed a woman had been locked away inside the house for years. Officers approached cautiously. The door was answered politely. Madame Monnier appeared composed, refined, dignified. There was no visible panic. They insisted on searching. Room by room, as the house appeared ordinary, curtains drawn, furniture neat, air still. Then they reached the top floor, a locked door. The smell hit first. It was not the smell of an unclean room. It was rot, human rot. The officers recoiled. One covered his mouth. Another stepped back instinctively. The odor was overwhelming, thick, almost physical. They forced the door open. Darkness swallowed the space. The shutters were nailed shut. Light had not entered in years. The air was stale and suffocating. When they pulled the shutters open, sunlight sliced into the room for the first time in decades, and there she was. On a filthy mattress lay a skeletal figure. Her hair was matted and tangled around her body. Her skin clung to bone. Insects crawled across the bedding. Feces and rotting food surrounded her. And she weighed barely 25 kilograms, around 55 pounds. She was alive. This woman was Blanche Monnier, and she had been locked in that room for 25 years. 25 years of darkness. 25 years without freedom. 25 years of silence. She had once been beautiful, educated, social, born into comfort. Blanche was known in Poitiers for her charm and intelligence. Suitors admired her. She attended gatherings. She laughed freely. But in her mid-20s, she fell in love with a man her family disapproved of. He was older, a lawyer, not of noble standing. To her mother, he was unsuitable, beneath them. Blanche refused to give him up. Her mother refused to allow the relationship. What followed was not an argument. It was imprisonment. Her mother and brother made a decision that would erase her from the world, and they locked her away. At first, perhaps they believed she would break, that isolation would bend her will, that hunger and darkness would force obedience. But days became weeks, weeks became months, months became years, and still the door remained locked. Outside, life continued. Her former suitor eventually died, unaware she had been held captive the entire time. Friends assumed Blanche had traveled. Some believed she suffered from illness. Rumors circulated quietly, but were never pursued. The family maintained social standing. They attended functions. They received guests. Above them, in suffocating darkness, Blanche lay on a mattress in her own waste. Psychological horror is not always screams. Sometimes it is silence. Imagine the first nights, confusion, pleading, rage. Imagine pounding on the door until your fists bleed. Imagine begging your mother. Imagine the moment you realize no one is coming. Years passed without sunlight touching her skin. Her muscles deteriorated, her bones weakened, her teeth decayed. Malnutrition hollowed her face. Her body became fragile, almost childlike in size. But what of her mind? Isolation distorts time. Without clocks, without seasons, without conversation, the brain begins to unravel. The human mind requires stimulation. It requires connection. Without it, reality shifts. Some reports say Blanche spoke incoherently when discovered. Others claim she expressed gratitude for being freed. But trauma that deep does not resolve in a moment. She was removed from the room carefully. The light hurt her eyes. She had to be carried. Hospital staff were horrified, and the press exploded with outrage. How could a mother do this? How could a brother participate? How could an entire community not notice? Madame Monnier was arrested immediately. Her brother, Marcel, was charged as well. The story dominated headlines across France. Respectable facade shattered. Behind the elegance had lived cruelty. Madame Monnier died shortly after her arrest, reportedly from illness. Some believed it was stress. Others saw it as an escape from full accountability. Marcel faced trial. His defense argued that Blanche had been mentally unstable and that confinement was for her own protection. But the condition of the room contradicted any claim of care. He was initially convicted. But here is where horror deepens. On appeal, Marcel was acquitted. The court ruled that there was no legal obligation for a sibling to intervene. No law explicitly required him to rescue her. Legally, he walked free. Morally, the stain remained. Blanche, meanwhile, was placed in a psychiatric facility. After 25 years of deprivation, reintegration into society was nearly impossible. She never fully recovered. She lived another 12 years, but remained psychologically fragile. Her youth had been stolen, her chance at love erased, her autonomy stripped. What makes this story so chilling is not just the physical imprisonment, it is the betrayal. The person who gave her life was the person who locked her away. Trust weaponized, family transformed into captor, and society blind. How does something like this happen unnoticed? Because evil often hides behind respectability. Because control can masquerade as protection. Because people prefer comfort over suspicion. The Monnier house did not look like a prison. It looked proper. Curtains drawn for modesty. Doors locked for privacy. No screams audible through thick walls. Or perhaps screams were heard and dismissed. Psychological horror thrives in normalcy. A monster does not always live in a forest. Sometimes it lives in a dining room chair hosting tea. Blanche's story forces uncomfortable questions. How much power should parents hold? When does authority become tyranny? What responsibilities do siblings carry? And perhaps most disturbing, how many other doors remained unopened? In the early 20th century, women had limited rights. A daughter's defiance could be seen as scandalous. Reputation mattered deeply. Marrying beneath status was not just romance, it was social suicide. But does pride justify destruction? Madame Monnier valued status more than her daughter's freedom. She chose control over compassion. For 25 years she passed that locked door. For 25 years she heard the silence. For 25 years she allowed decay. It is easy to label her a monster, but psychological horror becomes more unsettling when the monster looks human. Blanche's story lingers because it feels impossible. Yet it happened. Real house, real room, real woman, real darkness. And here is the deeper horror. Isolation does not always require locked doors. There are people today trapped in controlling households, trapped in emotional prisons, silenced by fear, manipulated by those who claim to love them. Blanche's room becomes symbolic. A place where autonomy dies slowly. A place where time loses meaning. A place where hope thins. When officers opened the shutter, sunlight entered like an invasion. Imagine that first breath of fresh air. Was it relief or overwhelming shock? After 25 years, freedom can feel terrifying. Psychologists understand that prolonged captivity rewires the brain. Decision-making weakens, social skills atrophy, anxiety intensifies. Blanche was not simply rescued, she was displaced into a world she no longer recognized. The world had advanced. Technology changed. Faces aged. Entire cultural shifts occurred while she lay in darkness. Her captivity spanned decades of history, and she missed all of it. Birthdays uncelebrated, seasons unseen, conversations unheard, laughter absent. When we think of horror, we imagine sudden violence. Blanche endured slow erasure, and slow erasure can be more brutal, to be forgotten while still alive, to be erased from social memory, to become a secret. That is terror beyond imagination. The anonymous letter that saved her remains mysterious. Who wrote it? A servant? A neighbor? Someone burdened by conscience? Without that letter, she might have died in that room unnoticed. One piece of paper altered fate, which raises another question. How many people suspect abuse but remain silent? How many doors could open if someone spoke? Blanche Monnier's name survives because someone refused to ignore a whisper. Her story is not just tragedy, it is warning about unchecked authority, about societal blindness, about the fragility of freedom. She was not chained in a dungeon, she was hidden in an attic, and that is what makes it chilling. Evil does not require dramatic architecture. It requires silence, and silence can last 25 years. If this story unsettled you, that means it should, because it reminds us how easily humanity can be stripped when power goes unchallenged. Like this video if you believe stories like Blanche's must never be forgotten. Subscribe to Stories Buried in Time so we continue uncovering truths hidden behind closed doors. Share this with someone who believes respectability always equals goodness, and challenge that assumption. And in the comments tell me, do you think the brother was truly innocent, or just legally protected? Let's uncover the darkness together.